Hello and welcome to Current Affairs on JTV. I was recently at the AIPAC conference in Washington, D.C., which is the largest gathering of pro-Israel supporters in the world. Here's a few of the characters I caught up with during the conference. Dan, thank you for joining me. I'd like to start by asking, how has Israel's strategic position changed in the last few years?
Well, it changed for the worse because the environment in the Middle East and the international environment got worse, but Israel is so strong that it can benefit from the positive things of the negative developments. For instance, from an Israeli point of view, the instability of the Middle East, the hostility, the violence is a very bad reality. But since the Middle East is also much weaker, namely the Arab states who used to be the enemies of Israel, the radical elements in the Arab world are much weaker. So the fact that the Middle East today is in shambles, that everything is going down the drain, is also helping Israel. And much more important than anything else in the region, Israel and Egypt, the most important Arab state, the one state that is more important than the rest of the Arab world combined, is now working with Israel against the radical elements in the region. Internationally, we have a very major problem, particularly with the administration in the United States. But again, Israel is so strong that it can afford to deal even with circumstances that are not favorable. I would put it this way. Israel is today in a situation that is much more complex than in the past, but much easier than the past. It's much more complex. Deciding what to do is much more complicated. But once we know what we want to do, we are so strong we can do it and achieve what we need to achieve, or at least prevent what we must prevent.
Okay, I notice you haven't mentioned the Palestinian situation.
Why should
as part of this. Well, the knife intifada, for example.
So, what will happen if there's another intifada? First of all, the impact on the Middle East is zero. So this notion that, you just get Israel and the Palestinians to have peace and everybody will be happy, or you will have war and everybody will be unhappy, is completely proven to be completely untrue. Second, yes, the Palestinian issue from an Israeli point of view is a problem because Israel needs to get rid of control of millions of Palestinians. But Israelis today realize that a solution to the Palestinian problem is not at hand because the Palestinians don't want a solution, that peace is not an option. A, we don't have a Palestinian partner. B, at the moment we don't have an American partner for anything that can possibly work. So you learn to live with the reality as it is, and in my view, the only approach to it would be a unilateral Israeli approach. I supported it for many decades, and I think it's about time that we adopt it. But
unilateral in what way? Yeah.
We got rid of the Gaza Strip. It's not that we started a process towards peace in the Gaza Strip. There will be no peace in the Gaza Strip. In the Gaza Strip you have barbarians, and not just the regime is barbarian, the people who freely elected this regime are barbarians. And these barbarians will continue to try to kill Jews. This is what they're about. This is what the people in Gaza are about. They're about killing Jews. They don't care for the lives of their children. They don't want better lives for their children. They want to destroy the lives of Israeli children.
Okay, but you're out of Gaza.
Yes, and we got rid of it. So we are not responsible for their future. We are not involved in their everyday life. When they attack us, we hit them and we get them to stop attacking us for a while. We don't get a better solution. We will have, for the foreseeable future, neighbors that will be irresponsible, unpleasant, hostile, and very often violent. It's a given. It's cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, and our neighbors are not exactly the nicest people you can possibly imagine. I mean, look at what they're doing to each other and ask yourself if they can treat us better than they treat their own brothers who speak the same language, have the same religion, very often have the same political aspirations. That's what they do to each other. That's what they do in the Middle East. That's what they've always done in the Middle East, but today it's out in the open. Concerning the West Bank, we have people who at the moment are not making war against us because we hit them very hard 10 years ago and they don't have the appetite to go back to where they were a decade ago. But they also don't want a state because they don't want to get responsibility. At the moment, the whole world is interested in them and they get billions of dollars. If they establish a state, it will be another crappy Middle Eastern state that, fails because Arab political culture controls this particular state. So they don't want a solution. We can't get a solution. So the only way is to take the Israeli settlements out of the heartland, keep them in the settlement blocks, and then we can negotiate for 2 years, 200 years, 300 years, as long as it takes, but as long as we don't control them. Now, will everybody complain? Yes. Will everybody complain anyhow? Whatever we do? Yes. So at least let's not have the burden while we're getting the complaints. The complaints we'll learn to live with. But the significance of the Palestinians in the Middle East is negligible, and I suggest we don't waste the time of this interview discussing the Palestinians. Let's discuss serious business.
Okay, let's turn to serious business. And your view, Iran. Is Iran serious business?
Iran is a very serious business, and particularly recently, there's a great cartoon I've seen in a Saudi newspaper. It shows Kerry as a teacher of a school, and the Iranian teacher stands by the blackboard and he writes 5 + 1 = 0. I think this is a very good way of capsulating what happened between Iran and the powers, Iran and particularly Obama and his administration leading the 5 + 1. Iran is a menace to the Middle East. It is, and it will continue to undermine anything in the region, to radicalize the region, to get Iranian hegemony in the region. And Israel must be prepared, and is prepared, to deal with this challenge. This is a serious challenge. By the way, the Iranians are a serious people. They're a very bad enemy, but one day they may become also an ally, because there's nothing wrong with the Iranian people. There is something profoundly wrong with the Iranian regime. If the Iranians get rid of the barbarians that at the moment are in power in Tehran, then Iran can be an anchor of stability in the region. And at the moment, they're the most dangerous enemy in the region because, unlike the Arabs, the Iranian society have a healthy society.
Now, what's interesting about what you're saying is that you say the Israelis could handle this situation, but they haven't to date, have they? I mean, Iran's power has grown over the last decade to the point where it's now dominating in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, and Israel's done nothing.
Well, the question is, what could Israel do? Israel could do something vis-à-vis the Iranian nuclear project, only Obama and his administration vetoed it, and they could veto it because Israel couldn't start something that may end up with American involvement without American consent. Israel, what could Israel do? Occupy Iran, occupy Iraq, occupy Syria, Lebanon? I mean, this is not an option. Whatever Israel could do, Israel did do. For instance, the only reason we've had sanctions against Iran was that Israel had a credible military threat. And Israel was wise twice. First, by preparing this credible threat, and second, by not using it. But Israel has had an effect on the sanctions. Therefore, the minor positive elements of the agreement, vis-à-vis the major dangerous elements in the agreement, are thanks exclusively to what Israel has done. You would never have had the determination of the United States to do what the United States did were it not for the fear of Israeli independent military action in Iran. Yes, it's true Iran became stronger. Yes, it's also true it took Iran much longer than it could have taken were it not for Israeli actions, including actions that nobody took credit for and should not take credit for. But the important thing is Israel fortifying itself against Iran when Iran becomes more powerful. For instance, we have already the best missile defense any nation ever had in the history of mankind. We're developing even further. We are working with the Egyptians and indirectly with the Saudis against Iran. And more important than anything else, we don't trust the ideas coming out of Washington and of Europe saying the Iranians are moderating. They're not moderating, they're just trying to be very, very smart when they're radicalizing, and they cheat people who want to be cheated. And unfortunately, on both sides of the Atlantic, there are people who are eager to be cheated, and the Iranians are willing to oblige.
Now, for all your dislike of the Arab states, you hinted at a big change happening there in terms of transformation of relationships between Israel and the Gulf states.
It's not dislike. What I'm doing is I'm analyzing the reality in the Arab world, and I'm saying, as very many Arabs are saying openly, that unfortunately the Arab world is hopeless. And I'm not saying it with any kind of happiness or with, an Israeli interest in them being in a hopeless situation. I think it's bad for us. It's bad for us that the region is unstable, that it is unstable for the foreseeable future, for the foreseeable next generation. So I am looking at the reality and I'm reporting what I'm seeing. It's not a question of liking or not liking them. Egypt is in a situation that is much better than it could have been. In other words, Egypt under Sisi is dramatically different in a positive way than Egypt under the Muslim Brothers. And I'm delighted that here again, what the Americans expected will happen did not happen, and what the Americans unfortunately assisted in happening did not happen. And we have in Egypt something that I'm not very happy about. This is not exactly a Jeffersonian democracy, but what we have there is a person who's responsible, who understands that the real enemy is Iran and not Israel, who is willing to work with Israel against the Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So basically our situation in the region is improved, because the Arab radicals are weaker and Syria no longer exists, Iraq no longer exists, and that we are cooperating with the most important Arab nations. So we are in much better shape than before.
Final question, Islamic State, you've not mentioned it at all.
Because I don't think it's a major menace to the Middle East, and I think it's a mistake by the United States to put it on top of its enemy list. Is it a bad thing? Yes. Are they barbarians? Yes. Do they threaten American interests and the interests of Arab states that I want to be stable in the region? Yes. But are they the most important enemy? No. When the United States focuses on the Islamic State, but actually works with Iran against the Islamic State and strengthens the position and legitimizes the position of of Iran in Iraq in order to fight the Islamic State, I see here a list of priorities, an order of priorities that is distorted. Turkey is a very major problem. Erdogan is one of the most dangerous people in the Middle East, and in a way the most dangerous because he's heading a state that is a very important state. Erdogan is not only a megalomaniac, he is also a very, very dangerous person. And if Americans work with Erdogan and practically with the Iranians against Daesh, I think this is not the right order of priorities.
Dan, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. I'd love to continue for more. Thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you for another episode of Current Affairs on JTV.